Hey everyone, it's Evan Kirstel and Dave Michaels for another Talking Heads, Talking Points Insider Report for July 2022. Dave, how are you?
I'm well. I appreciate you doing this live stream because aren't you on vacation?
I never stop. Vacation, staycation, it's all one big
You
party
never do
here.
stop because when we work together normally, I kind of feel like you're on vacation.
That's true. I do take a lot of vacation. I mean, it used to be that the summertime, like the Europeans, the Swedes, who you know so well, they took the whole summer off. I don't feel we do that anymore. Do we take whole summers off, or we never did, or no, we never did that.
One trip to Disneyland if you're lucky.
So let's get right on point. It's been a busy news month for July in enterprise communications. You think it would
Actually,
slow
I
down?
disagree with you. I disagree with
Oh,
you. July was a pretty slow month. There were a handful
complete
of
opposite.
big stories, but you're right. I think people are on vacation. People are at home with COVID or monkeypox or something. But there wasn't that many headlines. It was actually kind of a quiet month, in my opinion.
All right. Well, that's it. That's all, folks. There's no
That's
news
it.
to
That's it.
talk about.
But there were a few.
No.
There were a few.
Okay, so let's talk about the few enterprise communications collaboration contact stories that are noteworthy. Where do we start? Because this is your newsletter, and you always prioritize these in your very unique
I
way.
appreciate that. So the insider report, for those that don't know, is a report that I put out. It's a paid paywall report. I got a paywall now. Everyone should have a paywall. So I got a paywall, and I put these reports behind the paywall. Insider reports that come out monthly. There's a monthly newsletter, and then subscriptions also include some other stuff. But I always kind of limit the insider report to whatever happened in the month, and so it came out on Monday actually, and it covers the stories of July. And the big story of July, the biggest story of July, period, no matter who you are or where you were on this planet, was the heat. It was a hot, hot month.
I didn't know this was the Weather Channel. I thought this was about enterprise communication. So what's the spin? Like data centers are overheating, and
Well,
there's not
certainly
enough
Google
cooling, or
Google and Amazon had to shut down their data centers in the UK, of the UK of all places. It's not supposed to get hot in the UK, but we saw just a tremendous amount of pretty much everything that the climate people have been concerned about. Everything from tornadoes, floods, drought, fires, extreme. So hot that the roads were closed, the airports were closed. It was a pretty bad month, and I would say that other than the data centers shutting down, it's the reason I brought it up in this newsletter is because I feel so much that the enterprise comms companies are actually part of the solution if they would embrace telework. So during the peak of the pandemic, everyone was sent home. And when everyone was sent home, we stopped commuting. And lo and behold, fish reappeared in Venice, and carbon dramatically went down. And we know that commuting is a bad thing for our planet and our health. And so I don't understand why the enterprise comm industry is all talking about hybrid work and talking about the future of work, going back to the office. I really think we have an opportunity here. And there's a few companies that have done this. I'm gonna put Slack on a pedestal. Slack, their keynote last year at Salesforce.com was about the digital headquarters. They talked about sending everybody home. Stuart Butterfield said, if you would have asked me if we could have sent everybody home, I would have said, no, you're crazy. Of course not. But we did, and it worked great. And we don't need our offices anymore. And they're shutting them down. And I think that is a thing that a lot of companies, and Slack is basically saying, it's working because of the technology we sell. And so I think there's a great opportunity here for a lot of the UCaaS companies and meetings companies to, forget hybrid office, stay home. And same with contact centers. They're not even talking to people that are at the office. They're talking to people who are at home. So why are they going to the office? So I think that this heat wave of July really puts into it, and I put in the newsletter a bunch of events that happened in July, including Supreme Court narrowing the EPA rights. we're kind of going the wrong direction, in my opinion. So,
but the home can be a very dangerous place. I once read that 90% of accidents happen in the home. So
yes.
I moved. I moved.
Well,
okay,
that's a good resolution.
That's
a good answer.
Comic relief. But yeah, another big one, Andreessen Horowitz, and the A16Z, the big famed venture company, announced their headquarters is now officially in the cloud.
Yeah.
So they have no headquarters.
2600 Hertz closed its offices permanently, and everybody at home. So a lot of companies are getting it. I think they see it as one, employees are more productive, two, employees are happier, three, that they can do it. I don't understand why everyone in UCAS is talking about hybrid office, and so a lot of issues there, and not everyone can do it. So I'm not saying every company should shut down, but I'm thinking that we need to tie the climate change conversation and the telework conversation together, which are kind of separate conversations. Which brings me to our mutual buddy Elon. You were talking to Elon the other day, weren't you, Evan?
Well, I was tweeting at Elon. We don't really talk. We just tweeted each other.
Elon is one of these people that I just completely confuses me, and I must be the only one that gets confused by Elon. But anyway, he is very much concerned about the climate and the future of the planet. He supports carbon tax. He dislikes fossil fuels. He's done wonders to popularize electric vehicles. They were really kind of political statements before the Tesla, and now people just want the Tesla. And so he's like all over this stuff. But when it comes to work from home, he says, well, you can work from home all you want as long as you spend 40 hours in the office. And let's talk about SpaceX too. The purpose of SpaceX in its mission statement is to colonize Mars, not for tourism, but as plan B, because we're destroying Earth. And so he's all about saving the planet, but he wants nothing to do with work from home, which is, it's a very confusing subject, but of all people, he would be one that I think would be pretty excited about letting employees stay home, but whatever.
Well, we're going to watch this saga unfold. I, for one, will never live in Cubeville again. And I think a lot of young people are, they're keen to get together and network, but not in a traditional corporate hellhole of cubes and gray office walls. But let's move on. Let's move. Anything more substantive than heat as a topic, or what's next on the?
Well, okay, so that was the opening story, but then the rest of the newsletter is kind of broken into categories, and so that first section is about general industry news, and actually, to your point, I did another non-technical story in here. I did the BMW charging for heated seats. I tweeted that, and I think you tweeted it as well. It's interesting because a lot of people are really upset about this. The hardware's in the car, and now BMW wants you to subscribe to the service. We all know that subscriptions are what everybody wants in business, and so the question is, have they gone too far? Is this a heated seat too far? I can tell you that my wife's Volvo had a software-only option. We didn't buy it. It was the Polestar option, and it actually increased the horsepower of the vehicle. It was a one-time fee, like $5,000. So no hardware change. It was just more software unlocking the performance of the vehicle. And so this has been around for a while. This concept of having the hardware in place has been around for a while. BMW thinks that they could save money by putting the heated seats in every car and only enabling it to people who pay for it. It's an interesting thing. We've been doing this in software for a while. We started doing it in cars, but that BMW decision to charge for electric seats, that was apparently a feature too far. The Volvo feature, Tesla charges for self-driving, lots of big features people don't seem to mind being an extra upgrade, even though there's no additional hardware. But that may have been a little too trivial. What do you think about that? Would you pay?
So you're saying BMW is getting into the SaaS marketplace, sitting as a service?
Absolutely, sitting warmly as a service. It's really a fascinating concept of being able to just turn on features. I think it's going to butt up against against two other things. One is the right to repair, because the heated seats are there and wired. Um, if it breaks, and will the dealer fix it for free if I'm a subscriber? So whatever, or can I fix it for free? And then the other thing is all the software hacks that are happening. Well, will there be a bunch of gray market unlock your heated seats for, just like it's going to happen. I mean, it's going to be there. It happens on everything else, and so.
The average BMW driver, I think, will find this just annoying. I mean, does BMW need another $15 a month from its customers? I mean, this sounds like
you did downplay it.
nickel and
$15 a
dime.
month on every BMW, or even half the BMWs out there. That's real money.
That's just nickel and diming your customers. What you don't do on TalkingPointz. It's a real, you don't send them a bill for every 25 cents for every story, right? I mean, it's all in.
Another big one, kind of along these lines, end of an era, I would say. I was a little upset about this one, but nothing to do with enterprise comms again, is Nikon is going to stop making SLR cameras. They've been making SLR cameras longer than I've been alive, and there's not many products on the market today that I can say that about. And it is, I understand it. The smaller cameras are not 35 millimeter. They're not SLR. They don't have moving parts. They're better. They're whatever. I understand it. I could have seen it coming, but I didn't, because I just assumed SLRs will be around forever. So end of an era. But anyway, let's get back to enterprise comms. Let's see here. So we definitely seem to be in some economic shifts here. We talked about this on a separate call. I don't know what to make of this, Evan. We've got
is there inflation in software? Is this just an excuse to raise my Salesforce pricing by 5%, or is it just steaks and gasoline that we need to worry about? Or, I mean, inflation, software is kind of deflationary, right? I mean, you sort of you get more, faster, better functionality each year.
The theory is that cloud communications products are supposed to be economically recession proof, and that's, we haven't tested this theory. We're about to, but the theory is that companies that you pay for a feature for all your employees, that you need it. So we saw Zoom go up during the pandemic, and so the question is, when economic times happen, will people spend less on it? I think that all it takes is one employee not to be in the meeting, and so for it to be an online meeting. So I don't see online meetings going away. I really question whether we're going to see a recession in a lot of enterprise comm software. Now, 8x8 this month, or not this month, July, lowered their guidance, and I was thinking about that, and I figured, why not? If you're the CEO, Dave Sipes, if you lower guidance because everybody else is lowering guidance, it's like, you're not going to get in trouble. And if it turns out that you were wrong, you beat expectations. It's not great to beat expectations, because you're better off to be, being on target, but it's a lot better than it is to be short. And so you beat expectations, and the market will forgive you. And if you don't lower your guidance, then the pressure's on. So I think they're sandbagging. I think, Five9, like that same week, raised its guidance.
Yeah, amazing.
So I don't know what to make of these economic indicators, but I don't think enterprise comms is going to see a big drop. Now, of course, the stock price has nothing to do with how the business is doing today. Stock price is how the business is going to be doing in years from now, and so it doesn't really matter what they report. The stock price.
There are two trends I'm seeing, not so much in enterprise software, but one is SaaS sprawl. There's a lot of SaaS applications that were maybe over purchased, over deployed. People got too excited, maybe have 6-7 apps across different areas, and there'll be some rationalization. There are even tools now that look at, do you need these apps, and what's your pricing, and are you overpaying? And also cloud, there's cloud sprawl. People they're licensing too much, or over provisioning cloud, and a lot of researchers or developers are saying, oh, we'll just buy a box, and we'll on premises for running AI and ML and other intensive applications.
Well,
So yeah,
in any
it's
kind
interesting.
of recession, any kind of discretionary spending goes out the door, and so a lot of things that you're describing might be discretionary spending. I might, you're a better example. You might subscribe to 16 video streaming services, but if times get a little tougher, maybe you'll narrow that down to only
Yeah,
8
I'm
services.
already down to only buying 2 or 3 watches a week from,
See, so
5 to 7. So
So discretionary
yeah,
spending is obviously going to go down. The issue is a lot of this enterprise comm stuff is not discretionary, and probably aren't going to see that many big dips. Now, a lot of them are priced per employee per seat per month, and so if companies downsize a little bit, we're seeing that with some companies. We'll see some drops, but we always see some downsizing. And there's not a period in history where there's not some company laying
yeah,
off
it made
somebody.
me laugh as a former Oracle employee. There was a big announcement about a RIF, reduction in force.
Yeah,
We're cutting $1 billion from the business. I'm like, Oracle cuts $1 billion from the business every 3 months. That's just what
yeah.
they do. They just right size, downsize, outsource, shift. So, you got to take all these announcements with a grain of salt. But what's next on the insider report for July
Well, in that first
2022?
section there, we got the enterprise trends, and so I got a section here on return of wholesale. This is an interesting phenomenon, I think. I think it's, and we've kind of talked about this too in some other channels, Evan. But uh, the return of wholesale is, if you think about, let's say, hosted telephony, that started with companies, service providers that would go out and they would buy, BroadSoft or BroadWorks from BroadSoft. They would go out and buy a Metaswitch platform. They would go out and buy the GenBand platform, and they would build up their own business around hosted PBX. There was Cilantro was a player that BroadSoft acquired, but there was a bunch of these companies, and the first magic quadrants for hosted telephony were all these providers that were buying other platforms. And over the years, as the industry matured, the Gartner guys decided that if you have to be in the magic quadrant, you have to own and control your own software. So all those service providers that bought third-party platforms, we call that wholesale, are no longer in the magic quadrant, and it got replaced with companies like Cisco WebEx and Microsoft Teams and RingCentral that are hosting and controlling their own software, 8x8, and so that's the current magic quadrant. So we know that sector is doing really well. That's the retail sector, and a lot of companies are doing really well in that space. Companies that are kind of smaller are losing a little momentum because Microsoft's growing so fast, and companies that are using third-party platforms like the BroadWorks or the Metaswitches, they don't get as much attention anymore because they don't appear in the magic quadrant. But that sector, that wholesale sector, is growing like crazy. Partly because people see hosted telephony as mature and a commodity, and if your local ISP that is giving you your internet services or your telephone trunks or your cloud, your internet connections, if they say they've got dial tone and they can make you a bundle, sure, we'll go ahead and buy it. And so we're seeing this resurgence actually of wholesale companies, and so this includes companies like I got them listed here somewhere. Where are they listed? Here. No, that's not. Where are they listed? Do you see them where they're listed? Oh, here we go. Several players, including 2600, Intermedia, Alianza, Sangoma with their Astra solution. Cisco relaunched the BroadSoft solution just last or 2 weeks ago, and so we're seeing them kind of fill that wholesale void, and it's really a part of the growing sector right now. It kind of shrunk, and it's growing again.
I just like that you still use the word trunks and circuits.
Oh
That's
man,
still very exciting that we get some retro.
when I get really
Uh,
technical, I use pots.
all right, so wholesale is back. I always buy wholesale, never pay retail. But what's next? What
Uh,
is next?
I think we should talk briefly about Slack. I mentioned them earlier, the digital headquarters and working from home, but I thought it was really interesting that they raised their plan for the first time by 75 cents. I first off, I was like, I had no idea they hadn't raised their prices before. I thought that was really interesting. I was like, oh, everybody else has raised their prices. And then secondly, 75 cents. I love it. It just feels so anti-corporate. It seems great.
Well, when you say 75 cents, what is that for? A user?
Per user per month. That's
Well,
their
that's a big that's a hefty increase.
yeah, but almost everybody else will always raise it at least $1. Nobody does 75 cents. I mean, it's just like it's a
You have change for $1?
Exactly. So this only affected their Business Plus users too. It didn't even affect their excuse me. It only affected their Pro users. It didn't affect their Business Plus users. But the other thing they did, which I thought was kind of sneaky, Slack and Zoom are pretty much the two success stories we have in enterprise comms with a freemium model. We have lots of freemium models in consumer, but there's not that many in the enterprise side. They're getting to be more, but the two standout successes are Zoom and Slack. And Slack's model was very clever. The more you used it, the more history you had in the Slack application, and the bigger that gets, the more valuable it becomes. And so Slack effectively charged you for access to your history. It was I think 10,000 messages was the maximum. And so if you started, as soon as you did your 10,000 first message, it started deleting content and say, hey, that's my valuable history. I got to go back. It's like you're saving all your email. And so Slack has found out, apparently, I can only assume, found out apparently that some people don't use it enough that they ever really run out of that 10,000, or it lasts them years and years. So they never have to pay for the service. So Slack changed their policy. Instead of 10,000 messages, it's 3 months of data. And so after 3 months of data, you start losing your history. So they minor change. Most people, rolling their eyes. It's actually pretty significant. It's going to make a lot of people reconsider their.
Isn't freemium the way it's done now? I mean, Google and G Suite and Microsoft all have freemium options.
Google's an interesting one. They got rid of it. They've got Gmail, which is free, which is the consumer plan. But as far as all the enterprise stuff, I've been on Google for a long time, and I have to pay now. They got rid of their free plans.
Well, that $13 billion a quarter profit. They got to keep that thing tuned up. So
yeah.
Okay, what's next?
iMessage. Apple came out with the ability, and I think this makes a lot of sense, to edit your messages that you've sent. And you're better at this than me, Evan. I mean, there's not many things where I would say that publicly, but you are better at me. I have a lot of typos in my tweets, and I'm always really regretful that I could never decide if I should delete it or not and redo it because it's already got replies and all this stuff. But it's kind of embarrassing because it's got these dumb typos. I really want an edit thing. That's on Twitter, but in text messaging and all these messaging apps that we use in the enterprise, they're all pretty much like that. You really can't edit things, and if you think about it, you can't edit email you've sent because you've sent it. It's no longer on your server. It's no longer in control. Even if it's internal, it's on your server. You should be able to fix it. Maybe at best you can recall it, but you can't edit it. But on messaging, it's all centralized. It never leaves the server. It never leaves the Slack server. It never leaves the WebEx server. It never leaves the Teams server. And so why not edit it? And so Apple kind of said, why not? They're now allowing you to edit it. There's restrictions on how much you can edit. And here's the best part. There's a change log. So if you said that you gave me permission to do this, and then later you change it to you did not give me permission, and I did it, and I go back and find that change log. And so you actually said that I could do it. So I think this is the way enterprise messaging should work. It's a very powerful tool. Why do we break it? Why do we disable this stuff? And Apple's going to have enough attention with iMessage that more people will say, why aren't we doing this?
Enterprises are really not using iMessage. I mean, they are inadvertently, but
consumers are, and that expectation carries over to their tools at work.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because with encryption, we saw that with the January 6th riots, they couldn't get a lot of the message because they were sending iMessages. So in addition to some obfuscation with deleting texts, the iMessages were never retrievable. So it creates lots of problems in industries that are, like policing and banking and others where they have to, for compliance purposes, keep a record.
So we transitioned into the messaging part of the document. We went from general news into the messaging and video. The next story here that I want to talk about is Yammer. And if you recall, Evan, we had Morale on our Talking Heads podcast.
Is it still the year of Yammer, or
it is definitely not the year of Yammer, because as far as I can tell, they nailed a pretty good nail into the coffin on it this July, with the release of Viva. What's it called? Viva Engage, I think it's called. And
great
this
name.
is
Viva Engage.
Yeah, Viva Engage. And so now I've never understood why Microsoft had Yammer and Teams, and I've raised this with them before, and they say they do different things. And yeah, of course they do different things, but the Venn diagram, they're like mostly the same thing. And to fix it so that they do different things wouldn't be a lot of code. You can basically add a news feed to Teams, or add more what do you call it? What's the word I want? More nested messages on Yammer. But they keep them separate, and they've always had this ridiculous explanation of inner loop and outer loop communications, and I used to watch them explain the inner loop and outer loop thing, and it was just kind of a fun thing to see if they can do it with a straight face, because it never made any sense. But I was convinced Yammer was going to go away years ago, and I've been wrong every year. I still might be wrong. And in fact, I was really wrong. Year of Yammer, 2019, I think it was, when they actually completely, rebuilt Yammer. I thought, oh crap, I guess that's really be here to stay. But I tell you, now they've launched Viva Engage, and it has a lot of Facebook-like features, and it has a lot of Yammer-like features. And I think it's a shot across the bow at Facebook Workplace. I think it's
just what we need, more Facebook-like features. Yes,
that's what the world is asking. There's a reason a billion people use that, or billions of people use it. But and it's also doubling down on Teams as an application, Teams as a platform story, which is important, and it's also doubling down on the first-line employee story, which Microsoft has actually been pretty good at. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more Viva Engage and a lot less of Yammer. But they haven't actually announced Yammer's going away. They just announced that they built a brand new application that does everything Yammer does a lot better. And guess what? It's free. So we'll see how that does. Anything else here?
Continuing on.
Yeah, let's go on to customer engagement section. So the big news there, you know what it was. You know all the people, Evan. Avaya.
The saga continues. Many of us have been ensconced in this story for like most of our lifetime.
That is it. And you and I aren't even employees or customers, and you got to feel for them. They've had so much crap at that company, undeserved crap. I mean, these are the people that work there are good people. They're doing the best they can. Their customers are good customers. They bought the stuff because it works well and it meets their needs. This shouldn't be this hard. But the previous time the company got itself in trouble with creative financing, they went private, and the recession hit at the wrong time.
Vulture capitalism.
Yeah. So they ended up in Chapter 11, and then as I pointed out in my article up on No Jitter, Avaya is just a really complicated company, and it's got a lot of history, and it's going through all these transformations, I should say. And so it was really sad when they went to Chapter 11 the first time. They came out of Chapter 11, 2018. They had new leadership. They had their debt under control. They had the ability to invest in themselves for the first time in a long time. They've been underinvesting because they were going into Chapter 11. And so it was pretty optimistic, and everybody was kind of walking tall over there, and rightly so. But unfortunately, over the past 5 years, they've made a series of blunders. And so the timing was great, by the way, because the timing was announced on Thursday before the weekend. So I had all weekend to write up my report on No Jitter, which was nice. and I had it. I got it in the insider report, but I think that it's really interesting what's happening because now they brought in Alan Masarek. I assume you knew Alan. Alan knew
Well,
everybody.
we both know Alan because he's been on Talking Heads, and
That's right. He
yeah,
was one of our first. He was one of our
right.
first guests on Talking Heads.
It's like
back when
three years ago. Yeah.
Still doing video. And Talking Heads is now an audio podcast. Subscribe on your local podcast, favorite podcast. But the Alan is it's kind of interesting because Alan is one of these visionary guys, and he loves the technology. He loves to roll up his sleeves. He will spend hours with you debating the pros and cons of the technologies and how it applies here and there. What Avaya needs right now is a numbers guy, which ironically is what got him in trouble because the numbers guy, the outgoing CEO, he's great at numbers, but he's not much of a vision guy. And so if anything, I would think that Avaya needed a numbers guy right now. But they're going to bring Alan in, and Alan brings a number of things to Avaya that the other guy didn't have. He brings direct cloud experience, right? He had direct experience advantage with UCaaS, CCaaS, and CPaaS, which are all the three important as a services right now for Avaya. And the other guy didn't have that, and Avaya doesn't have that experience. And so they've got some CPaaS experience now,
he was a big deal at Google even before Vonage.
Yeah,
and so he knows a thing or two. He knows a thing or two.
But a couple of things that he's got that the other guy didn't have. He's got a Harvard MBA. I didn't realize Alan had a Harvard MBA, but
they won't even let me in the doors at the Harvard MBA school.
Yeah,
I tried to get in. Tried to get a coffee there once.
So he's got the cloud experience. He's got the education. He's got acquisition experience. At Vonage, they acquired a number of companies successfully. Yes, Avaya has acquired a number of companies, but the successfully part isn't used very often. And so it brings a lot of important things to Avaya. They had their all hand meeting at Avaya yesterday, I think it was. I obviously am not a hand, and so I couldn't be in the meeting. But I talked to a few employees, and he's definitely hitting the morale issues. He's saying the right things. People are excited about have optimism again, and so great change. Really happy for both Alan. Really happy for Avaya. Really happy for its customers. The question is now, what is Alan actually going to do? No freaking idea. But he will.
Stay tuned.
It will be a spectacular show. That's the main thing. It's actually I think it's going to be a good show. I think it's going to be really good. Also in Contact Center in July, we had the launch of Microsoft Digital Contact Center. This came out
of the blue for me. Was this something you were keyed in on?
No. Of course not. Microsoft does very selective. Usually when they brief me, it's like an hour before their announcement or something. But there was very little briefing going on. They announced it at Inspire, which is not a show that has IT people or analysts. It is not one of their technical shows. It's more geared towards CIOs. And I would say that it was a surprise announcement. And it was a really weak announcement. I mean, everyone is waiting with bated breath, including you, for them to announce that Teams has a contact center. But Teams is a very successful application for Microsoft. It has telephony capabilities, has meetings capabilities, but it doesn't have a contact center capability. So when Microsoft announces that Teams can do contact center, that's going to be a holy shit moment, right? It's like, holy cow, this is big news. That's big news. So they now
be able to reach. I want to be able to reach an agent from in Microsoft Word. Can I do that? Like, can I type one and get a pop-up agent to help me with macros or something?
Only if you have an agent on your team helping you collaborate on that document. So when Microsoft announces they're in the contact center space, it's like everyone's like, oh my God, it's happened. This is it. This is the big news. Oh, but it's not Teams. It's not Teams. And it's even worse because Teams is on the slide. If you go to the webpage for the Digital Contact Center, Teams is there. And there's a bunch of stuff there. Power BI, there's a bunch of stuff there that isn't really connected in any way to this digital contact center. So the digital contact center basically has two pieces that are important. It's Dynamics 365. That's the only place it's kind of an add-on to Dynamics. So you have to have that already. That's at least, a small percentage of the companies out there. And then a large part of the announcement is around Nuance. And I know, you know Nuance. They got acquired by Microsoft last year. Been around for a long time. Great company. We had them in the Innovation Showcase. Great stuff. When Microsoft announced Nuance, they said it was going to be for the healthcare initiative, and so we all stopped paying attention, off to healthcare. And then Microsoft figured out, hey, this conversational AI technology is actually pretty good. Where else could we use it? Well, everyone else on the planet is using it in the contact center. We don't have a contact center. I know. Let's put it in Dynamics and say we have a contact center. So bottom line is the Microsoft thing is important. It's a statement of vision. It's a statement of direction. It could be something. It may become something. It will become something, but it's not something.
Well, I'm glad you cut through the noise and all the confusion to explain that to us.
There we go.
So that's good.
Okay,
so moving on, what else is interesting or noteworthy? Comcast, lost for the first time broadband subscribers. That's kind of bizarre, huh?
It is. Well, they didn't lose. They didn't gain any. That's the. So they lost television.
They didn't lose. There wasn't one guy who quit, or they.
For every guy that quit, another guy signed up, and so it shows up as zero.
Okay, so they peaked. We're at peak broadband. Is that what you're?
Well,
suggesting?
I wouldn't word it that way, Evan. I think we're at peak broadband over cable. I think Comcast has probably got a largely saturated market, and so are people finding alternatives? Are people switching to 5G and 4G on their wireless? Are they switching to what's the SpaceX one? Satellite.
Starlink.
So it's an interesting narrative because when Comcast says they lost television subscribers, everybody yawns. And then the next thing they're supposed to say is, "But we grew in broadband," and they didn't say that. And it's like, well, I woke up out of my sleep, and it's like, why didn't they do that? So I think we have to kind of wonder what's going on. It's an interesting data point. I think that's all it is at this point. But it could just be people don't like Comcast. I mean, I've heard they have.
Well, it's a battle. I mean, I like Comcast, but in my new house and neighborhood, every house has either gigabit Comcast or FiOS from Verizon, and they're just in this neck and neck fight. And anytime I get upset with one, I can just talk to the other and
yeah, that's actually pretty rare. A lot of people at their homes don't have a choice. They call it yardstick competition. They're not you can't actually switch vendors, but you can compare your costs and price and services to other vendors. But I don't have a choice. I've got I think a lot of people have choices between cable and DSL, but you can only get DSL decent performance if you live pretty close to a central office. You don't know what central offices are, but there were these things that used to be important at one time.
I drove by a central office and I asked my kids, "Do you see that strange brick building that's like a fake house that has fake windows?" And I'll give you $100 if you can guess what that is.
Yeah,
I bet most adults couldn't.
They don't know what to do with them because they were fortresses, right? They have all this wire going into them, right? And they were meant to be secured, so they were fortresses. And so they're not desirable real estate for most people because they don't want all that wire and all that security. They don't have a lot of windows, to your point. But a bygone era. Speaking of which, the equipment in those companies, I pointed this out in that Avaya article on NoJitter. There's a dotted line between those central offices and Avaya. Like I said, Avaya comes out of Western Electric.
It's the granddaddy of a lot of these things. So
a lot of history there.
Direct DNA. Speaking of the granddaddy, have you sold the phone booth?
No.
Is it?
I got my phone booth up on eBay. I thought it would have sold. I've lowered the price tremendously. It has not sold. I got one guy that had an inquiry. I've got a fully functional glass Superman booth. That's what they call the glass booth. Superman booth. People always want the red British booth. Why would you want a red British booth if you live in America? You want
This
an
is
American Superman
Americana.
booth.
This is Route 66.
This is
If anyone's
that's right.
listening or watching, please buy Dave's phone booth. And
Anybody in the comms industry, either people like me who just are comms people or companies, you got to have it. In fact, the phone booth I have was at one time in service with CenturyLink or Quest or Mountain Bell, depending what year it was.
Lumen.
Now it's Lumen, yeah. And at Lumen headquarters, or not, at Lumen's old headquarters. I don't know if the headquarters is still there, but Lumen's old headquarters in downtown Denver. They have two phone booths in front of their building. They're just painted brown. Mine's original colors, and they don't even have phones in them. I got like working phone booths with a payphone in it, and the best kind of payphone. It's the rotary dial single coin slot. Most of the people like to go get the older ones that have the 3 different slots for different size coins. Those are all fake, unless you can find an original. I got the original single coin.
This is a tremendous bargain for someone out there. I hope they take you up on it. And last but not least, you had a story which kind of caught my eye around Amazon buying One Medical. And why was that in TalkingPointz? It's not really a telecom, communication story.
That's actually a fair observation. I so much of the enterprise comms companies have healthcare verticals, and they're really interested in healthcare verticals. The One Medical one was a $3.9 billion acquisition. So basically, what's happening here is Amazon wants to be in healthcare. And when you're Amazon and you want to be in healthcare, I mean, they've already launched the pharmacy business, and this is a subscription service for doctor services. If you're Amazon and you want to be in healthcare, you don't come up with a new poster or something. You go out and you buy multiple companies, and one of them being 3.9 billion. It's just phenomenal the way that company operates.
Yeah, and talking to a couple of people who use that service from One Medical, they're quite happy. It's sort of a virtual doctor on demand, and it's pretty cheap, $150 a month, at least for this person, and they love it. So, and there's no driving to the doctor's office for that person. So
I do believe I've had my first video meetings with doctors, and you have to wonder why you'd ever did the opposite. I mean, it does make so much sense. One other acquisition, you said it's the last story. So one other important, since the acquisition is one of the last sections of this newsletter, we've got to talk a little bit about Vonage and Ericsson. I think that's a pretty significant one. Wasn't sure it was going to close. There was a lot of hiccups along the way. It did close. It closed at the original terms, original expectations. I think it took an extra quarter to close, but fairly significant acquisition. I mean, we're talking, like $6 billion or something like that. I can't remember the price now. $6 billion, and it was Ericsson who exited enterprise communications back 15 years ago when they sold it off to Astra. I think what Ericsson is going to do is not crystal clear yet, but I think it's going to also be a pretty interesting show.
Well, they've run out of carriers to sell to, so they've acquired companies building networking solutions for 5G enterprise routing and
well, I think that's the key right there, is that 5G enterprise, because they've only been selling to service providers, but 5G enterprise is going to be a big business, and it's kind of hard to walk in to an enterprise with one product on your line card, and so having the Vonage part on your line card could be
great. Well, road trip. We'll go see Ericsson at Mobile World Barcelona in February. It's a quick trip from Portugal over to Barcelona, so it'll be a nice diversion. That was quite an overview. Yeah, there was a lot going on in the latest Insider.
And the best part of the newsletter is it's always got our two podcasts every month. We do two episodes of Talking Heads every month, and it's got a link to the two that we did in July. And so if you want to keep up on the Talking Heads podcast, and you don't want to subscribe for some unknown reason, you could always read it in here.
Just subscribe, people. It's well worth it. If you're an insider, you got to subscribe. All right, Dave. Take it easy. Stay cool.